January, just when I think you couldn't possibly get any worse, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself! What is up, guys, and welcome to my review of the new horror comedy Companion. This is a film that's been on my radar for a while now. I had some friends that saw it really early back in December, and I've been raving about it ever since. I've seen a lot of comparisons to Barbarian, which I'll get into, and I'm one of those people that really love Barbarian, so this is one of those films that, even though it had a January release, I had a lot of faith this was going to be totally up my alley. This is also a film that's going to be very difficult to discuss and review without spoiling anything. I'm going to do my absolute best, but what I will say now is that if you're somebody that has been avoiding the trailers and has miraculously avoided the poster that even gives away an element of this film, and you don't want to know anything about Companion, why are you watching a review? Now, I'm going to get more into this later. The element that was released onto the marketing, actually, to my surprise, was not as much of a spoiler as I thought it was going to be, so again, gonna be very careful, but there's certain details that are out there about this movie that is not nearly as devastating to your experience as a lot of us feared that it would be. And the basic plot of this film is that you have a couple played by Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher that go away for a romantic little weekend with some friends at this lake house, and very quickly things take an incredibly dark turn. And it's a movie that's unpacking and exploring love, what it means to be in love, love versus obsession, versus just the want of power over somebody, overbearing relationships, toxic relationships. It gets into all of that in some really creative and twisted ways. And while I have certainly had my share of disappointment so far in the little bit of 2025 that we have gotten into, I was a massive fan of Companion. Had an absolute blast with this, and I think a lot of you guys are going to absolutely love this flick. But if you find yourself to be somebody who's a little lonely and would like some companionship without the risk of having a very diabolical, carnage-filled weekend, then allow me to tell you about Tantally. It's likely that many of you out there find yourself occasionally lonely and would be made happier and healthier with a little companionship. Well, if so, dive into the universe of desire and self-discovery with Tantally, where all of your desires and fantasies can be unleashed and satisfied. They lead the industry with products that are not only soft, but more realistic, which will give you a much more immersive experience. All delivered straight to your door with discreet packaging, so no need to worry about those naughty, nosy neighbors of yours. And best of all, if you use the link in the video description and use code CODY12, you'll get a 12% discount on all products. And I guess the only thing left to say is, check out Tantally if you want a friend to the end. So starting off with the positives for Companion, I had an absolute blast with this film. Horror comedies are very extreme hit or miss for me. I find a lot of them don't get the mix right, where they're either too horrifying and too focused on the horror to really land in the comedy side of things, or they're just way too goofy and silly to ever really land effectively with anything they're trying to do to actually horrify you or put you on the edge of your seat. And Companion is one of those rare horror comedies for me that gets the mix almost perfect. There's a lot of really crazy things that happen in here that definitely put you on edge, that definitely grip you, make you really interested in where things are going to go, and yet you're laughing all along the way. And comedy is another thing that is a very extreme hit or miss thing for me. You guys hear me talk about it all the time, how I feel like comedy in film is almost dead. And Companion had a number of moments that genuinely got a great laugh out of me. Good situational humor, really funny written dialogue, performed really well by all these different characters. It just, the way that it plays out ends up getting so ridiculous that you also just kind of laugh with how things continue to get more and more ridiculous, over the top. And these characters just get deeper and deeper into this situation with seemingly no clean way out. A lot of that is credited to the actors in the film. Jack Quaid is somebody that I've always been a really big fan of. Pretty much everything I've seen him in, he has done great. And this is yet another character that just really fits his sensibilities, and, you know, is a bit of a mix of different characters that we've seen him play before with what he is going for here, but he continues to just be so charming and likable no matter where his character lies on the moral spectrum. And he pairs and has a lot of really great chemistry with Sophie Thatcher, who is absolutely the standout here. She's somebody that I would think I was introduced to in The Boogeyman, like a lot of us, a movie that I certainly wasn't that fond of, but she was one of the better parts of it. And then she was in one of my favorite films last year, Heretic. This is easily the best thing that she has done so far. And I think that the range of emotions and the range of things that she has to do with her character here is quite literally going to make this a star-making turn for her. She's going to be one of those actresses that the horror community watches Companion, and instantly she's one of our new it girls. She's one of those names that we're going to be asking for in all these different movies, and every time she pops up in a trailer, a poster, or an announcement of a new film, her name is going to get people more interested just because she is bringing her talents to it. And all of the side characters that round out the rest of the cast did an awesome job too. They're all a lot of fun, no matter how big or small their roles are. Everybody brought something interesting and fun to this movie. Again, a lot of really great written dialogue, which is the spice that makes humor work. If you know somebody that can put it on the page and know it's going to be funny and put it in the hands of an actor who's going to be able to make it even funnier on camera, that's a recipe for some awesomeness. And while I don't want to overhype the carnage here, this is not on like Barbarian levels, and I'm going to continue to get into that. This is a film that certainly does have some carnage candy. It does have some pretty wicked kills. It does have some very nice on-screen violence. So if you're like me and you're a bit of a carnage whore, you're a bit of a bloodhound, then there's that side of this movie that was really enjoyable as well, which always grounds it back down into the horror side. For as light and as funny and as jovial as the characters and the dialogue and the story we're going on are, it always brings you back down to how fucked up and twisted this is. I also thought they did a really good job at balancing having some genuine commentary here, exploring something, exploring a theme, talking about something that, you know, is one of those topics that we hear brought up a lot, especially in modern culture, in modern movie making, but doing it in a way that's fun, doing it in a way that's digestible, not doing it in a way that's overly heavy-handed or overshadows everything else or feels like the movie is message first. This is the type of movie that when it has something to say and it says it well, this is the examples I want to see more of. They're playing around with a lot of different subjects here that people can get very up in arms about, that they can get very emotional about, especially if they have personal ties to these subjects. And I personally found the way that they did it to be funny enough and wild enough that they're able to kind of point the finger in a lot of different directions. They're able to explore things in a way that I think most people should be able to enjoy them, even if they have some personal ties to what is going on. Now, I'm somebody that doesn't have any personal trauma or any kind of triggers involved with what they're exploring throughout this film. So, of course, I'm going to be coming at this from a little bit of a point of ignorance. But the way that they go so over the top with certain things, and they're really clever and really successful with the humorous takes and the humorous jabs that they go for here, as well as just the way that everything plays out by the third act, I feel like this is one of those movies that explores some things that are definitely dark and have some touchiness to certain people, but does it in the best possible way where I think the majority of us that watch this are going to be able to enjoy it no matter what our ties are to what they're exploring. Now, as I've mentioned a couple of times, a lot of people are instantly comparing this film to Barbarian because it's a name that's plastered over all of the marketing. It's the same creative team. The director of Barbarian was one of the producers of this. So I understand that comparison of just like it's from the same creative team. It's the same body of people that are giving these twisted ideas, but as a one-by-one comparison, I don't think that this relates to Barbarian at all. So I want to say that just to kind of have you manage your expectations. This is not a film that's going to go in the same tonal and wild directions that Barbarian went in. It's not nearly the same experience, and it's certainly nowhere near the same story. So this is something totally different. That the only comparison that I will make to Barbarian that I think is founded is that there's a number of twists and turns in here that are done really well. And it is a movie that unfolds in a way where I personally didn't quite know where things were going. You know, you can have a little bit of an idea of what we're exploring, what we're going to be going through, but there's always some little wrench in the system that's going to send the characters in a different direction than what you were expecting. And so it was like Barbarian in that way. And with that being said, I also don't think it's a film that entirely rests all of the experience on the twists and turns. I think all along the way, even if you're somebody that miraculously can figure out everything that's going to happen in this film, It's just a really fun journey. It's a really great group of characters. It's a really wild movie that has a great pacing to it. And the reveals of the movie, along with just the way that the situation ramps up throughout the three acts, just continue to engage you. So I think it's a movie that succeeds in all of its quieter moments just as much as it does its wild and crazy moments. And the last thing that I'll say here is that I think this is a perfect date movie. I think that it's a shame that, you have Heart Eyes that's coming out on February 14th, which hopefully that ends up being good and is certainly the more overt Valentine's Day movie of the two. But this would have been a perfect Valentine's Day horror comedy release because this appeals so much to both sides of the spectrum. It's got the dark and twisted side, it's got the carnage, it's got the really deep exploration of toxic relationships and the battle to gain control over each other, while at the same time finding numerous times in the movie to be a genuinely sweet and emotional romantic film. Like, it actually explores the happy side of love and, the side of love that we hope to find just as much as it explores the side that we really want to avoid at all costs. So again, a movie that is just written and executed so well to be able to appeal to so many different people, to touch on so many different things, and balance it all perfectly. And now moving on to the mixed, and here I am going to talk a bit about the marketing and the effect on the film. So if you're somebody that has avoided all trailers, you've avoided the poster, and yet you've strangely still watched this review, I've told you everything that I need to say to sell you on the film. I highly recommend it. I had a blast with it. Go check it out and then come back. But if you're somebody that already knows the one element, if you're somebody that is totally cool knowing that element, or if you're somebody that believes when I tell you that knowing that really doesn't affect the film in any negative way. It's not like a third act reveal you find out in the first 15, 20 minutes of the film. And I actually think that it was a fantastic experience even knowing that detail. Then stick around. But everybody else, you've been warned. So back in December, when a couple of my friends saw this film, not only were they urging me, you've got to check this thing out, it's awesome, but they were also saying, hey, avoid the marketing because I don't know how the hell they're going to advertise this without giving away something major, and it's going to be really cool to watch the film without knowing that. And obviously, I will never have that experience, so it's a little bit of a shot in the dark for me to say this. Me knowing that Iris, Sophie Thatcher's character, was an AI robot did not affect my experience with this film in a negative way at all. And I was almost positive it was going to because I avoided all trailers, and the first official trailer flat out shows you this, so they don't hide it at all in the marketing. But for as much as I can easily avoid trailers, I can walk out of theaters, I can not click on them and not watch them on my computer, it is damn near impossible to avoid a poster because it's a still image. It takes a millisecond for your brain to see it and register something, and you can't scroll past it fast enough. So whenever I saw the poster that showed Sophie Thatcher with the white eyes, I was pissed. I was like, son of a bitch. She's a robot. Why the fuck would you tell me that in the marketing? You assholes. You and the people in charge of Pet Cemetery 2019 can go fuck yourselves. And so even though I was really looking forward to this film for weeks, I was like, man, I know that's gonna be a huge bummer. I know it's gonna be some big, awesome, major reveal that they blew. Like, God, I'm so pissed about that. And when I sat down to watch this film, not only was I surprised how early on in the film they reveal that, it literally takes about like 17 minutes. So it's very early on. It's first act stuff. But I was actually kind of surprised at how well the first act played while they were trying to keep that secret with me knowing the secret. Like, there's a lot of double speak. There's a lot of things that are said that, of course, you're supposed to interpret it one way, and then once you know the reveal, you can go back and watch it and interpret it in a second way. I actually think the first 20 minutes would have played a little odd for me, and I would have been a little unsure of how I was feeling about this movie had I not known what Iris was. Again, I'll never know for sure, but there's a lot of double speak here where I don't know how I would have interpreted what they were saying if I didn't immediately know they were talking about her as being a robot, as being a sex doll. But with that said, this is going to be another situation that's going to be similar to Abigail and the controversy that trailer created. Now, I will say that there was a much easier way to market this film without giving that away than it was to market Abigail without giving away the fact that she was a vampire. But even with that said, people that see the marketing or see the poster, there's going to be a chunk of them that are going to swear up and down with everything that they are that the marketing tainted this film, that it let the film down, that their experience could have been up here, but it was down here because they knew that twist reveal, they knew that plot element, and wish they never did. And that's going to be valid. But for me personally, as somebody that would have bet money that was going to highly affect my experience, I actually don't think it affected it at all. It's literally the setup of the film. For me, it was no different than telling me that Abigail was a vampire film. I still had an absolute blast with it, and I had a great time with the section of the runtime, which is significantly smaller in this film, leading up to that reveal. The other mixed thing that I will say is that this is a film that is dealing with a very touchy subject of the implications of AI, amongst a lot of other things. And that's the one element of its messaging of what they're trying to get across with the film that I think might be a little hit or miss for certain people. I think everything they're going for on an emotional side, on the side of relationships, is going to hit very hard. But everything with the implications of AI, I think there's going to be a lot of people that don't have fun with that don't have fun with the directions they decide to go and are going to find it problematic in some way. I did not, but I guarantee there's going to be some that are. It's just one of those subjects that you're never going to be able to have complete fun with it without some people getting really up in arms about what you decided to do with it. Me personally, I think the whole theme of the evils of man compared and contrasted to the evils of machines, that's a theme that we've been seeing in movies for decades. I mean, all the way back in the Terminator franchise. This is nothing new. And so I enjoyed where they eventually went with things. I think they executed it very well. And now moving on to the negatives, and I'm not going to get into any spoilers at all with this, but it is a movie that there's a certain element that is brought up continuously throughout the film as a major plot element of what is happening that I don't think completely added up. I think that they cheated a few times. I think that you could really call it a plot hole in a few segments. And I can't say specifically what it is without tipping you off to where it eventually goes. But by the end, there's something that a few times they brought this up as something to be like a parameter of what characters can and can't do. I was like, I don't know if that completely adds up. I feel like you've broken those parameters a few times at this point. So why does it matter so much now? That's the one thing that they explore as far as the rules of this movie that I think they could have been a little cleaner with. All in all, guys, I had a blast with this one. This was a really nice surprise, and I hope that we have a year that's so awesome in 2025 where even as much as I like this, it doesn't crack my top 10, but it's good enough where I'm not going to be surprised if this ends up very high by the end of 2025, and we're only in the month of January, so fingers crossed for that one. If you love horror comedies, if you love the actors that are at play here, if you want to see some really interesting subjects brought to you in really twisted and weird and funny ways, definitely check out Companion. And it's a great date night movie too, so take your significant other and have a blast. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click down here for all my 2025 new release reviews. I'm also going to put a ranking of all the horror films I saw from last year for you to check up on. Please check out Tantally down in the video description below if you'd like your own little companion. And like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. So as always, guys, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.